Welcome back to the Chicana Kitchen. Today we're making pinto beans, one of the most essential and simplest recipes for any Mexican kitchen. So all we need to make pinto beans are a pound of dried pinto beans, a couple cloves of garlic, a chunk of onion, a bit of salt, and some water. Our first step will be to sort through these beans. I sort my beans directly into the Dutch oven that I use. You can use a Dutch oven, a big heavy stock pot, anything that will be able to sit on the stove for a few hours. So I'll sort the beans directly into here. We're just looking for any bits of dirt or pebbles, or sometimes you get a bit of dried corn or pea or something else in there. My beans come from a local farm and they tend to be really clean and not have anything extra in them, but you always want to sort through. All right, I've sorted through my beans, nice and clean, no extra bits of anything else. So now we're going to put water in the pan or the pot, enough to cover the beans by about an inch. Of course, some of them will float. It's not an exact science. That looks pretty good. We'll turn the heat on to high. Cover our beans. We're going to let those come to a boil and boil for 2 minutes before turning them off and letting them soak. All right, so we've turned our heat off. Our beans boiled for 2 minutes. They look like this. We are going to put the lid back on and let them sit for an hour. You can let them sit longer than that, but they really only need that hour to soak. Our beans have soaked for an hour. This is how they look. We're going to go ahead and strain them. Colander set in the sink. Some of the beans in there. Give them a little rinse. Do that again. They don't necessarily all need to go into that colander. We just want to strain off the cooking liquid from that initial boil and soak. There we go. Put these back in the pot, and we're going to cover it with some fresh water and start cooking. We'll add 6 cups of fresh water to our beans. And at this point, we're also going to add a little bit of seasoning. We'll put 2 or 3 cloves of garlic in. We'll peel that, but otherwise leave it whole. And a chunk of onion. Again, we'll peel it, but otherwise leave that intact because this is in there for flavoring, but we'll probably pull that out, all or almost all of it, out of the beans a little bit later on in the cooking. So we're just gonna take this chunk of onion, put that in as well, maybe 1 more clove of garlic, just for luck. And then we're going to put the heat on, bring this to a boil, and then once it reaches a boil, we will take it down to a low simmer and let those beans cook for at least 2 hours, probably a little bit longer. And here it's going to depend a lot on how fresh your beans are. And it sounds funny to say that we're talking about the freshness of dried beans, but beans that have sat on the shelf for a longer time are fine. They will just need a little more time to cook. Beans like mine might only take 2 or 3 hours of cooking time at this point. The only other thing we're going to add will be salt. There are a few different schools of thought on adding salt. Some folks say we add it right away. Some folks say that that'll make the beans tough and we shouldn't add it until the very end. I split the difference and I will add about a teaspoon of kosher salt to these beans when they've been cooking for an hour or so. So we'll check back in on these later, but for now we're going to put the lid on and let those come up to a boil and take them down to a simmer. So our beans have been simmering for a couple of hours. We've been stirring them here and there, but really they don't need much attention. At this point we're going to check in. We can see that the onion has broken down. We can fish some of that out, but it's not a big deal. Take a few of the pieces out, but most of that's just going to kind of sit in with the beans. This is also a good point at which to test them for doneness. I did go ahead and add about 1.5 teaspoons of salt to my beans. I'm going to take these out, let them sit for a second so they're not too hot to taste. Meantime, we'll take a few more bits of onion or garlic out of the beans. And again, you can leave these in if you want. Depending on what you plan to do with your beans, you might mash them at this point. You might leave them like this. You may strain them to put them into a stew or a soup. You can freeze some of them. Do whatever you want with your beans. All right, let's go ahead and taste it. 1 or 2 of these. Yep. At this point, my beans are soft. They're tasty. They've got enough salt in them, not too much. So we're gonna go ahead and turn the heat off and call these done. Here are finished pinto beans. We've added a bit of queso fresco and a couple of salsas. Otherwise, they're just as is. You're welcome to mash them, refry them, do anything you want, but they are great just as they are. Enjoy.